Hi guys, welcome back to another reading of the Bible. I will be reading Matthew 5 today, the ESV. If you want to read along, go right ahead. Alright, the first story is called The Sermon on the Mount. Seeing the crowds, he went up on this mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him. And that's the whole story. Alright, I should move on, I guess. The Beatitudes. And he opened his mouth and taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when others revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you. It's a good story. Just all the people who are blessed in Jesus for keeping him in their hearts and keeping God first, I guess. Alright, next one is called Salt and Light. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled under people's feet. You are the light of the world. A city set on a hill cannot be hidden. Nor do people light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a stand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father who is in heaven. In this story, I think it's basically saying salt and light in a very similar context, that salt tastes good. You know, put salt and stuff, it makes it taste good. But if it loses salt, you throw it away and don't discard it, basically. Just like, I guess, in a similar metaphor to if you lose faith of Jesus, why would, I don't know, I mean, you just become that of the earth, I guess. You throw out. And in a similar vein with the light, you know, you have to shine Jesus' light throughout the world and show God's glory instead of, you know, being in a basket, as he puts it. All right, the next story is called Christ Came to Fulfill the Law. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, until heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot, will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Now I think these are kind of sub-stories because the heading looks a little smaller than like a story heading. This one is called Anger. You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable up to judgment. But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, you fool, will be liable to the hell of fire. So if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge and the judge to the guard and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. Okay, so that's pretty much like, don't be angry with your enemy, you know, go reconcile with them. And then he brings up the commandment of you shall not murder. In verse 21, he says that. But, you know, Jesus is saying, you know, come to, like it says in 25, come to terms quickly with your accuser. You know, just don't be angry with people and forgive them. I think that's the big thing with God in general, is forgive your enemy or love your neighbor. All right, this next one's called Lust. You have heard that it was said, you shall not commit adultery. But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. For it is better that you lose one of your members than that your whole body be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. For it is better to lose one of your members than that your whole body go into hell. Alright, so that's kind of saying, I guess if you look at a woman with lustful intent, it's adultery. It's pretty straightforward. I feel like this one, where it's like, if one of your body parts cause you to sin, throw it away, because it's better to live in this life without a certain member than to live in hell forever. Alright, next one is called divorce. It was also said, whoever divorces his wife, let him give her a certificate of divorce. But I say to you that everyone who divorces his wife, except on the grounds of sexual immorality, makes her commit adultery. And whoever marries a divorced woman commits adultery. Again, very straightforward. Not too much, but, probably shouldn't divorce your wife in the first place, except on the grounds of sexual immorality, as he says. All right, next one is called oaths. Again, you have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not swear falsely, but shall perform to the Lord what you have sworn. But I say to you, do not take an oath at all, either by heaven, for it is the throne of God, or by the earth, for it is his footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Let what you say be simply yes or no. Anything more than this comes from evil. Okay. So I think with this, I'm guessing it's saying, like, when you swear to do something, and then you most likely won't because you're only human. I don't know, I have to look this up, but I think I'll do that after. I'll just finish the rest of this chapter. The next one is called retaliation. You've heard that it was said, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist the one who is evil. But if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if anyone would sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. And if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Give to the one who begs for you, and do not refuse the one who would borrow from you. So that one looks like it's saying it's not eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. It's not like you would do it, you did this to me, so I'll do it to you. But it's more like someone seeks you out, be with them. Don't resist them. Be with them, help them through whatever they need. This story is called Love Your Enemies. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who prosecute you, so that you may be sons of your Father who is in heaven. For he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends rain on the just and on the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet only your brothers, what more are you doing than others? Do not even the Gentiles do the same? You therefore must be perfect as your heavenly Father is perfect. Alright, so I guess this is just love your enemies, simply the title of the story, but going a little deeper, it says, like in verse 45, for he makes his sun rise on the evil and on the good, and sends the rain on the just and the unjust. It's just saying, everybody is equal in the eyes of God, you don't need to be enemies with people. In 46, but if you love those who love you, what reward do you have? Do not even the tax collectors do the same? The tax collectors still have to collect taxes from the people they love and the people they hate. And nobody likes taxes. So that's kind of the point, just everybody's equal, But I think, and then going back to the last one of retaliation, it's go with your enemies, love them, don't resist them. But that's it for Matthew 5. I think one of the biggest thing that stands out for me right away is that in my Bible I have all of what Jesus says is in red. You can kind of see there. And literally pretty much this whole chapter 5 is in red. Like, this is all just what Jesus is saying to the people. Yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff in here that's very enlightening to me. I think going back to the beginning, the first verse is really just him setting up the scene, I think. And then going into the Beatitude story, it goes to the poor, the ones who mourn, the meek, the one who hunger for righteousness. All these types of people will inherit the kingdom of heaven. But he doesn't say the other types of people who won't, like the pure in heart, the peacemakers. He doesn't say like the war makers, So I think that's very telling of how you have to be, to be with God and be like God and try to live your life very similarly. Going into the next story with the salt and light, I kind of feel like I'd said my piece with this one, but salt and light used very similarly. Salt, if you're not, tasteful in God, like salt is tasteful in your food, and what's the point? And then with the light, be the light in the world, be the light of God. be light in the darkness, I guess. And then the Christ came to fulfill the law. I feel like that's clearly the strongest section of this, verses 17 through 42. These are just kind of the greatest stuff that, because it builds on the Ten Commandments, which was, to my knowledge, the most important parts of the Old Testament. But I think it's important, he says in 17, do not think that I have come to abolish the laws or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. He is trying to tell people, I guess not a new law, but to tell them the fruition of what it is. Kind of revise them, I think. Kind of expand on them maybe. Give more definition to what is, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable of judgment, like in 21. He's not simply saying don't murder, but he's saying this is why you shouldn't murder. Or like in the lust section in 27, you should not commit adultery, but he says what is adultery? He says looking at a woman with lustful intent is adultery, because he doesn't say your wife. I don't know. And then he also goes into more depth of what helps with the lust, and then goes into the divorce section, which is pretty, I don't know, doesn't do much with me because I'm not married. And the oaths, I don't know, I think I want to go deeper into that, like I said earlier, because I don't really get the oaths part. Hold on. Okay, so looking into it a little bit more, it kind of refers to the fact that, like it says in Numbers 32, chapter 30, verse 2, that it says, if a man vows a vow to the Lord, or swears an oath to bind himself by a pledge, then he shall not break his word. He shall do so according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. So I guess it's also saying that in the time of the Israelites, that was very binding because it was a promise under the Lord. But the loophole was that if God meant for it to be something, then he would have had it happen. Like it says as an example here, I swear to the Lord that I will pay you back with this money. Then they say he doesn't pay him back, then he would be like, well, the Lord would have had this happen if it was truly important. Jesus goes on to expand on that by saying just simply yes or no, because anything else comes from evil, he puts it. Like he says in 36 here, and do not take an oath by your head, for you cannot make one hair white or black. Like you can't just promise something if you don't know what's going to happen. You just say yes, or in my opinion, or I can try, or I'll do my best, or no, can't happen. Like I don't think I'll be able to do that. There's very much, you don't make a promise under the Lord that, it gets rid of the loophole, I guess. So, and then going into retaliation, I feel like this is probably strongest for me because it's an interesting take. I don't think I've ever heard it like that. Just like walk with your enemies, I guess. Walk with somebody who strikes you in a way. If somebody takes out your eye, then ask them why. Don't take out their eye back. I think it's a very strong message there and it's very hard to do. I don't know. And then I think it also kind of links in with love your enemies, that story, because I feel it's also well known. Well, maybe not well known, but I feel like it's also like just kind of a known thing about Jesus, at least in Christianity. Maybe not in general, but to love your enemies, you don't need to hate them. God wouldn't hate them. And if you just talk with your friends, then you're not doing anything for you or anybody else in the world. You are just being comfortable, I guess. Loving your enemies is clearly outside of your comfort zone, but that's something you do when you follow Jesus. You go out of your comfort zone a lot. It's not too comfortable, but at the end of the day, it is a better and more fulfilling thing than anything else in this world. Like in the examples he gives with the tax collectors and the Gentiles, it's kind of what I was saying. It's just like, it's not going to help you to be comfortable all the time. You have to love your enemies. You have to be uncomfortable. You have to pray for them. Like he says, you have to pray for your enemies so that not only you can be with God in heaven, but they can as well. It's important for, a godly person to show that they are godly, I guess. All right, I think that concludes my thoughts on chapter 5 of Matthew. I will see you in the next one.